Our guest speaker is Adrian Danila, and he is currently the Regional Maintenance Director for Lesson. Lesson's a rapidly growing property services organization that facilitates logistics for every stage of home services and repair for both residents and service professionals. This is an innovative technology type organization. They use data capabilities such as providing analytics and insights to clients while they standardize operational processes and building field training. There's not anything that's ever done this before that I know of. In addition to his responsibilities with Lesson, Adrian has a wide array of expertise, and he's doing some really great things for our industry. For example, here, just a little bit, I've asked him to really touch on his background. It's fascinating to me. He's an attorney, he's been a teacher, he's won educational awards, he's set several records in maintenance operations turnarounds, and he holds several professional certifications. So let's give him a hand and then take it away.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, Mrs. Brown. I'm Adrian Danila. I'm very excited to be here with you all. A little nervous too. I never spoke in front of this many people before, right? Maybe 15, 20 people was the most, right? So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about my personal history, you know, how I ended up being here today, right? 1975, I was born in Romania, a communist country at the time, you know, a very brutal regime. If you're knowing what's going on in North Korea today, nowadays, this is exactly the type of life that people lived in Romania back in the day. I'm going to give you a few pointers, a few examples, if you're not too familiar with communism. So, government wanted to control everything. They wanted to control people's lives. You're not allowed to think for yourself. Thinking for yourself, speaking up, could have been a crime. You could go to prison for that. You could not practice or speak about religion freely. My parents were teachers, both. They were not allowed to go to church because the government didn't want them to influence young minds like yours into believing in God. So my upbringing is really not something that's really close to the faith. I was never exposed to faith, mainly because of that. They were probably afraid to express, to talk about it at home. Growing up, I remember I was 6 years old. My father would take me in a room. We had no electricity. Electricity was rationalized. So we would get power outages. We'll have probably electricity 4 or 5 hours a day. But typically in the evenings, we would not have electricity. So he spent half of his monthly salary. He bought a radio that we would run on batteries. And 8 o'clock p.m. every night, there was a 1 hour program broadcasted by Voice of America. Okay, so this is the way we learn what happened in a free world. This is how I learned about America. And they have some really nice reportages about American cities. Reportages that I couldn't see on TV. By the way, on TV, we only had 2 hours a day. And it was mainly just communist propaganda. Everything that you will see on TV was that Western societies are evil. Capitalism is evil. And I was listening to those programs, and part of the programs, they would describe American cities. So I was listening with my dad in the dark, and then I was close. Excuse me. I was closing my eyes trying to imagine what the cities, the American cities, look like. And that was the first time when I really had the desire to visit America if I ever had a chance, the opportunity. So I went to school. Going to school and growing up, we had to fight for survival. Food was not available in the stores. My mom would wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, take me to the city, and we would spend more than half a day waiting in lines for food to come in. We didn't even know what type of food is going to be delivered. Literally, you will walk down the street and there'll be a line, people waiting. You will stand in line and wait. The reason why she took me with her was because everything that was given to people was rationalized. For example, if they had chicken, each person will get 1 chicken. So because she had me with her, we would get 2 chicken. She actually built those huge, humongous bags that we could put in whatever we could get our hands on for the day. We did this probably once or twice a month. And that really helped her feed our family. When I was 14 years old, I left my home village to go to high school in my city capital, Bucharest. Obviously, since this was 200 away from my home village, I had to live intern. I had to live in the dorms. So I started living on my own pretty much since I was 14 years old. This taught me a lot of life lessons. And I wanted to say that I've tried a lot of stupid things, like so many stupid things. But I learned the hard way. 1993, I graduated high school. So I tried to get into law school. The first year, I failed. So because I didn't have anything else lined up, I had to return to my home village. And I was a teacher for 1 year. I taught 3rd grade. Second year, I went back to law school and I tried again. And I passed the exam. 5 years later, 1999, I graduated law school. And then I went and I took the bar exam. So I became an attorney too. Never practiced as an attorney, but I did work for a couple of government entities in Romania. In 2003, in 2002, my wife won the visa lottery. This is a US government program. The government pretty much gives away 50,000 visas all over the world. Anybody could actually put their name in a hat, and if you're lucky, you get a green card. This is exactly how I ended up coming to the United States. So we both participated in a lottery, and she won. And then 2003, February the 2nd, was my first day in the United States. So we came here, we left everything behind. None of us spoke English. My English vocabulary consisted of probably 30 to 50 words, most of them that I wouldn't speak in an environment like this on TV, right? And we had 4 suitcases. We packed everything we could in 4 suitcases, and we left everything behind. Our whole entire family behind. The first few jobs that I had here were working with Romanian guys, because having no history here, not speaking the language, you just can't get a job. It's very hard. So I did construction. I used to be a helper in construction, and I worked with a crew of Romanians. One day they sent me to McDonald's. They said, we feel like having some fries. Go and buy some fries. So I didn't know the English word for fries. So I went to the counter and I asked the gentleman out there, I said, can I have some potatoes? And he said, do you mean fries? And at that point, I wasn't really sure that, that's exactly what that was the word. But I said yes. I knew that he's going to give me something to eat, right? So I said yes. So it turned out that they were fries, was exactly what I was hoping for. This was probably 3-4 months in since I came to the United States. a couple of months down the road, I kept applying for jobs. Nothing came up like a full-time job. My dream job at the time was $10 an hour in benefits. That's what I was shooting for. That was my goal. I met with a friend, a Romanian friend. He studied to get his PhD at Georgia Tech. And then one day my friend said, I saw on our website, there's a couple of groundskeeper positions advertised. Why don't you apply for one of those? So sure enough, I went and applied. No response came out of that. But what happened is this groundskeeper work stuck with me. And then I went back to all the job boards that were available at the time, and I kept looking for groundskeeper jobs and kept applying for groundskeeper jobs. A few more months passed, and then I found a part-time job through the Department of Labor website for an apartment community. The manager over there at the community called me, I interviewed, and they offered me the job. They offered me the opportunity. I worked part-time and doing other odd jobs after my part-time job for about 6 months. While I was working, I was living at an apartment community, a different apartment community than the one that I was working at. So the apartment community where I was living at had an older gentleman that used to work as a groundskeeper there. He was always early, 6:30, 7 o'clock. He'll be out there cleaning up the property, picking up the trash. One day when I was going to my part-time job, he was not there. So I went to my job, I worked, I came back home, and I told my wife, there's a job here at a community where we're living at, because I didn't see the groundskeeper. He's not here. So I'm going to go to the manager and ask for his job. So her response was like, are you absolutely insane? The man could have a day off, like he could have a PTO, vacation. Like people take off like they're just not robots, right? I said, no, I could tell you, I promise you that he's not working here anymore. Something happened and they have the job. But then I got discouraged because, she made a point, right? People need to take vacation. The next morning, I'm going to work, the same thing. The gentleman is not there. So when I came back from my part-time job, I went straight to the manager's office and I asked, do you have any openings? So they said, yes, we have a groundskeeper opening. So I interviewed over there. They gave me the job. They gave me the opportunity. That was my dream job. $10 an hour, full-time with benefits. And that was in 2004, I think March 1st, when I started over there. I started over there at the same time again. I wasn't speaking much English, so I had to still learn. And I went to some night classes, but then because I had to work so much, I didn't have the opportunity to continue with the classes. So I dropped out after a couple months. So everything that you hear me saying today, my level is being learned. I've learned by speaking with other people and hearing other people speaking. So I started working as a groundskeeper right there. A couple of years later, I was an assistant service manager. An opportunity came up for a service manager with a different apartment community within our company. I've applied, I was turned down. Then I went back online and I started looking for opportunities. Found a recruiting company that reached out, had an interview with them, and the owner of the recruiting company promised me that she will probably have something down the road. She knows of a great vice president of an up-and-coming property management company in Atlanta. The up-and-coming property management company was Greystar. Greystar, probably some of you heard of them, right? How many of you heard of them? Most of you, yeah. Greystar is the largest property management company in the world today. They manage over 600,000 apartment homes all over the world. Back then, they had 5 properties in Atlanta. Now probably they have half of the properties in Atlanta under management. So I went. The recruiter set up a meeting with a VP. I got the job. I got the opportunity. And I started working as a service manager. 18 months later, they promoted me to regional maintenance director. That was my first regional maintenance director role. And I worked in that role for about 2 years until 2009 when the economy collapsed. And when the economy collapsed, Greystar eliminated about 25% of their corporate positions. My position was one of them, so I was not out of the job. They offered me something to be a service manager on one of their properties. So I had to step down, go back on site. And I did that for a few more years. I left Greystar. I went to work for Corlon Partners. 4.5 years I worked over there. And then after Corner Partners, there's an opportunity that came up again for a regional director. 2017, I started with Balfour Beatty Communities. They're a fairly large operator, 50,000 units throughout the country. I worked there. Then from there, I moved to ECI Group. I had a short stay with Bridgestone Residential for about 4 months. And then currently, as Mrs. Brown said, I'm working for Lesson. Lesson is not a property management company. We're actually a service company, a vendor for the industry, if you wish, right? So what we do, we're building a platform to help single family and multifamily investors to manage their maintenance workflows. And at the same time, we are building the workforce to help manage that, to actually provide support. They hired me as a director for the East region, just for the maintenance part. We have 3 divisions: maintenance, turns, and renovations. So my role is director for East Coast, and then we're building those teams all over East Coast. Since I started, this is mid-December, we open up Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa in Florida. We open up Nashville and Memphis. We open up Charlotte, Raleigh, and we're about to open Winston-Salem in North Carolina, Birmingham, Alabama. We're growing super fast. And we're going to open Charleston too in South Carolina. So very fast growth. As a matter of personal opinion, I think that because of the labor shortages, more and more management companies, owners will look at ways to outsource work. So a company like the one that I'm working for currently will be more prevalent in the future. And they might be companies that you might be interested to work for at some point. Because again, I think that the way the industry, the trend that I'm seeing is that the owners are trying to externalize most of the services, whether it's leasing, whether it's maintenance, right? So just something to consider in the future. I think it could become an opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about branding. And I basically just found one of the many definitions, that you could find on the internet about branding that describes branding. The term brand refers to a business and marketing concept that helps people identify a particular company, product, or individual. Brands are intangible, which means you can't actually touch or see them. As such, they help shape people's perceptions of companies, their products, or individuals. Brands commonly use identifying markers to help create brands, identities within a marketplace. They provide enormous value to the company or individual, giving them a competitive edge over others in the same industry. As such, many entities seek legal protection for their brands by obtaining trademarks. Can someone give me an example of a brand? A very well-known brand? Please. Apple. Somebody else?
Nike.
Excellent. So, Apple and Nike, right? Who in the world does not know who Apple is, who Nike is? Well, behind those brands, there's an enormous marketing machine, right? If we think someone says, well, this product sells itself, I think that no product really there sells itself. I mean, their products are exceptional, right? most people want to have, a Apple laptop. They want to have, they want to wear Nike. They want to wear Adidas or Puma. But at the end of the day, there's a huge marketing machine, and there's billions of dollars that they spend every year in branding and advertising. Would this apply to individuals, you think? Could individuals be a brand?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about a brand, like an individual that's also a very well-known brand.
Michael Jordan.
Everybody agrees? Yes. Michael Jordan. He's not just the outstanding athlete that he used to be. He is a brand. He is a brand, right? Are you a brand, sir?
I wish. I mean, yeah.
Y-
Brand.
Do you think you're a brand?
Sure. Yes.
Excellent. That's a better answer. You are a brand. Each one of us is a brand, whether we want it or not. Now, what makes the difference is that, are we going to be the ones defining our brand? Because if we're not, somebody else is going to define it for us. Okay? What do we see here?
So New York, Times Square.
And what do we see in Town Square?
Advertise.
Many brands, countless brands, right? You are a brand. You are a brand. Anybody familiar with the gentleman out there, with Gary?
Yes.
Who's familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk? All right. I'm a big fan. I'm personally a big fan. He's all over the media. I think one of the reasons why he might not have such a great reach is that maybe some people are not too fond about the way he uses language, that he uses foul language. I actually think that, that plays a lot of times plays into his favor. But Gary is definitely one of the largest brands out there. He's a very popular person. He's a personality, a TV personality. He's a CEO of a few companies, very successful businessman, built businesses from the ground, took them to hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, right? Part of how he became successful is branding. If he knows one thing, he knows how to brand himself. I personally want to share with you, I've learned a lot. His videos are very, very educational. Whether they're about business, about branding, they're completely free all over the internet. I encourage you to spend a few minutes and see what he's talking about. He has a lot of great information to share over there. So personal branding, practice of marketing people and their careers as brands, right? As I was saying before, if you're not going to brand yourself, somebody else is going to do it for you, right? So in other words, if you don't speak for yourself, you don't say who you are, right? Somebody else is going to say that for you. What's your name, sir?
Justin.
Justin. Okay. So Justin, if you're going to stay quiet, if you're a quiet person, right? All of your colleagues right here, they have opinions about you, right? And the way you're going to be perceived, if you're a very, introverted person, a person that's not really doing a lot of interaction, you're going to be known as the way your colleagues and, your family, your close circle is going to see you. So you're going to eventually let others define your brand. Is that something that you want to do?
No.
Or would you rather have control?
I'd rather have control, make my own brand.
Anybody else wants to be like you? Like him? One way to define your brand, to make your brand known, it's content. Let's see how many of you right here have a LinkedIn account. Okay? All right? Excellent. How many of you here have an Instagram account? How many of you have a TikTok account? Okay, so looks like most of you use social media, right? Or most social media platforms. The power of social media is just something that is really something that you should be paying attention to. For professional branding, I recommend LinkedIn. That's my personal favorite, right? I'd like to hear from you when it comes to branding and professional. What other platforms are you considering outside, besides LinkedIn?
To help us with branding? Is
Yeah.
that the question?
Yes.
YouTube?
Yes, YouTube. Yeah, excellent. That's an excellent one. That's an excellent one. Another one? How about Facebook? Could I help you? Sure. You could create a professional page on Facebook and just do branding out there. Define your brand. What would you want to be known for, right? Now, discipline. There's a couple of schools of thought when it comes to brand discipline. I'm hearing a lot, and this has been said to me. You should be focusing on one or two things, or very few things, right? That you choose to define you. For example, I'm the outspoken person, or I'm the expert in property management maintenance, right? Because you're gonna be known for a couple of things. My personal choice is really to just express who I am. I write about property management. I write about maintenance. I write about branding. I write about faith, and I'm also a meme creator. Like I do this in my spare time, right? I love doing memes, and I'm gonna show you a couple later on, one or two. All right, so I don't want to limit myself to just being just part of who I am. If you read my LinkedIn feed, you're gonna know exactly who I am. There's going to be no confusion about who I am, what I stand for, because everything is out there. Again, I think that there's a school of thought that says you should be focusing on a very, very few things versus just 5 or 7 things. The next is resident retention strategies, right? In property management, residents are our reason to have jobs, the reason for real estate to be there. Companies are building real estate, they're building apartment communities, and then they offer them out for rent, right? If there's no renters, then there's not a business. There's just gonna be some empty buildings. It's super important once we get residents to come into the door, is to convince them to sign with us to become a resident. And also, once they become a resident, is to stay. It's way more expensive to bring in a new resident to replace a resident that's moving out than to just keep the existing resident in place. In other words, through service that you provide, through the interactions that you have with them, to convince them to sign lease renewals, maybe several lease renewals. It's been said that the average sum of money that you're having to spend when someone moves out, it's anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000. So by doing a little math, if you were to save, let's say, 5 residents a month from moving out, and you will convince them to renew, let's say at $5,000 saving, it's $25,000 a month times 12 months a year. That's $300,000 that you could save just by finding 5 residents and convincing them to renew. When you do that at scale, when you manage 2, 3, 4, 500 unit properties, imagine how that scales up. That could turn into $500,000, $1 million, $2 million easily, just by providing great service. So this is one of the reasons why service is important. One of the things that I've done, and actually I've created, I have written a policy, was a resident orientation policy. So what it does is creating a standard procedure for how do we greet the residents when they first come into our community, when they're first coming to move in. Basically, we made it mandatory for the leasing professional that rented the apartment to them and a member of the service team to be present and take them to their apartment home and show them the apartment home. You know, the functionality and everything, to show them the layout, to show them everything that, you know, they will be using once they become a resident. And there's also another reason for doing that. They get to know our employees, our associates in person, and we start building relationship from the very first day when they move in. One other reason why we involve the service team members is because if they find something that's wrong in an apartment that our service team missed during the turn process, they could fix it on the spot. Typically, the older model, or the other model, I should say, is that someone, you know, a leasing professional will hand them the keys and say, welcome to your home, here are your keys. They will go to the apartment. They'll start unpacking and moving stuff in. While they're moving stuff in, they start seeing, you know, there's a broken blind. The toilet doesn't flush properly. You know, there's a cobweb out there. And they start, you know, writing stuff down. And typically, they go back to the office and relay that situation to the office. A lot of times that paper or whatever they used to note, that gets lost in a process. And it might take sometimes days or weeks for someone to address their concerns. If you have a resident, a service team member present right there at the day when they're moving in, they're just taking notes, and literally their job is to go back to the maintenance shop, pick up the parts of everything that's needed to fix, to address the issues that the resident wants, and address everything on the spot. You know, it's way easier even for the service team member to resolve everything on the spot versus having to come back 2 or 3 days later when the apartment is fully furnished, when there's moving boxes all over the place trying to navigate their way through solve the problems. So there's a significant benefit to have that sort of a policy. Hire and retain the best site teams ever. People are make it or break it. We as an industry, property management, we are a people industry. I know that you probably hear this all over the place. We're about people, we are, but the whole reality is people are what make a company successful. Everybody has real estate. Everybody is renting apartments. What makes the difference is the type of service, right? Who provides the service? It's our team members, right? Leasing personnel, management, service team members. So when you hire the best of the best, you're going to have the best success rates with the residents, with retention, with renewals. One other thing to focus on as a management is focus on the asset preservation. Don't let the fair maintenance items piling up, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to make your property unappealing. And then eventually current residents will start moving out. And then it'll make it harder for you to bring new prospects in as residents because of the way the property looks. Communication, it's extremely important. Be very direct and be very transparent in communicating with residents. Resident events. Resident events are a great way to build a sense of community. You know, let's say that you have a wine tasting party one night. You get 20, 30 residents to show up. They get to know each other. They get to know their neighbors. Most people don't even know their neighbors because they're going to work, they're coming back from work. There's very little interaction. Putting together a resident event will get, hopefully, more residents to get to interact with each other, get to know each other. And also they get to know the property staff too, which is super important in person. Getting a new resident is 7 times more expensive than retaining an existing one. Well, part of what I was saying earlier. Resident activities and relations. The quality of relations you have with the residents, it's a direct correlation with the length of their stay. I just mentioned that you're able to establish some rapport, and a good rapport, hopefully. This would give you a better chance to retain them, to have them sign renewals, to sign repeated contracts and leases. Treat them with respect and courtesy. Be attentive to their needs. Show empathy. Respond to their requests promptly. It's very, very important that each company has a policy and then it follows the policy to where service requests from residents are completed. Typically, a service request, most companies have a policy of completing with it within 48 hours from the moment it's been related to management or called in. Emergencies got to be taken care of immediately, of course. So that really helps a lot with resident retention. 70% of the customers are lost due to a lack of personal contact. So personal contact is also very important. Make it as personal as possible. Call the residents back on service requests. They have a request. The service technician turn in the work saying the work is being completed. Have someone in the office follow up with the resident and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, was this completed? Was the work completed? Did the technician clean up behind themselves, right? Was it completed to your satisfaction? Do not wait until the resident comes back a day later mad saying, this is a mess, they left a mess, they didn't complete the work, the notes are saying that the work was done, nothing has been done, sort of thing. If you're proactive and you're the one calling them versus waiting for the bad news, it goes a lot better. Even when something goes wrong, it gives you the opportunity to fix it. And it also gives them a sense of, okay, these people really care about me as a resident. They value me as a resident. Resident requests. This is where your service team plays the #1 role. First of all, the way the service requests are received, make sure the phone calls are always answered. If the phone rings, someone in the office got to pick up always. Don't wait for it to go through voicemail. If you're gonna let it go through the voicemail, it's a lesser of a chance that you're gonna be able to speak with a resident in person. So you're losing not only the opportunity to respond immediately, but you may be losing an opportunity to make a contact, to establish contact and build some rapport with a resident while you're on the phone with them. One of our service requests, a policy is great to have in place. 48-hour completion time, it's ideal. Sometimes even 24 hours, it's even better, right? And emergencies to be responded to immediately. And then have a system to constantly check emails from residents and voicemails, make sure that there are no requests sitting out there and not being attended to. Hire the best maintenance professionals. This is kind of the toughest thing that we're facing as an industry. How do we find great maintenance professionals? We're gonna go over that in more depth next in recruiting. Professional in their appearance and the way they speak with residents. Have them clean behind themselves after the work is completed. If the resident is present, communicate what was completed. And also at the end, if the resident is satisfied with the work, ask for a review. Ask them to do a review. How many of you live or used to live in apartments? In an apartment? Okay. You're probably not at the age where you're renting yourself, or your experience was not directly related to renting an apartment. I'm assuming maybe your family, your parents did, but where do people go first to find out about the service of an apartment community? What level of service? Is this an apartment community that I want to live in, or maybe it's not so desirable? Where do people go first?
The internet. We'll say Yelp.
Yelp. Okay. Where else?
The internet, like Google reviews and stuff like that.
Okay. So review sites, right? We could call that review sites, whether it's Yelp or Google, or for the apartment industry, there's a site specific to reviews, apartmentratings.com. It's pretty popular. So everything's public nowadays, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ugly. So people share their experiences online, right? So what you do want to do is, when you have great service, when you have a resident that's satisfied with the service, is to ask them for a review and say, Mr. Smith, I appreciate your kind words. Would you please take a minute? What I have done in the past, we had cards. We created cards that we will hand the residents with where they need to go to, so they don't have to go do a Google search or whatever for apartment community. The whole information is right here. So if you have a satisfied resident, you just pull a card out of your pocket and say, would you please take a couple of minutes to do a review? And you'll be amazed. Most people will go ahead and do it, and this will really improve your community ratings. Recruiting. Recruiting is a process. It's not an event. We should be recruiting all the time. If the company has 700 employees, your recruiting department should be recruiting for 700 positions at any given time. Ideally. Of course, in reality, it's not possible. You just don't have this many recruiters. And why am I saying this? Things happen, right? There's employee turnover. People come, work for companies, and they also leave and go to work for another company. Wouldn't it be nice, right, to have someone walking out the door and then the next second to have a replacement for them? How would that help you serve your customer? Okay? Think about sport teams, right? Think about sport teams. So what do they have? Someone gets injured. What do?
Backups.
They have backups. They have the bench, right? So build a bench of talent. How do you do that? You network with people. You network, you reach out to people. You reach out to people that you don't even have positions for. You might, in the near future, create positions for. It's very, very important that you reach out to people and you connect with them at a personal level so they know who you are, they know who your company is. So when an opportunity comes around that you think that they're gonna be a great fit for, you know whom to go to first. And there's another thing too. If they know that you're a hiring manager or a recruiter with your company, okay, you already have that rapport established. They know you, or they know of you, right? And they know about your company a little bit. Chances are, when they're gonna be on the market to look for an opportunity, you'll be one of the first people to call. You wanna be that person. You wanna be one of the first people they call. Because this is how you get the best talent. Okay, this is one of my memes right here. So, one of the first rules in recruiting is you need to know where your candidates, quote unquote, live, right? What I mean by live, I mean where do they hang out online, right? So I'm gonna give you all examples for maintenance because this is what I've done most. I mean, 99%. It's recruiting for maintenance. And I'm seeing over and over again ads put in places where maintenance technicians don't go to. For example, the best example is groundskeepers, make-ready technicians, and maintenance technicians, positions being advertised on LinkedIn. Well, they really don't have accounts. Even if they have accounts, they're not active on LinkedIn. However, there are places where they hang out. There are maintenance-specific groups on Facebook that I have tens of thousands of members. Why would you spend a few minutes putting a Canva, creating a Canva, and putting it out on LinkedIn where nobody's, gonna, like, no qualified candidates are going to read it, when you could do something similar and put that on a Facebook group where you have a possible audience or thousands or tens of thousands of people, right? Another mistake that's being done in a recruiting process is that we think, okay, our company owns 20,000 apartments, right? And because we own 20,000 or 50,000 apartments, people are gonna come to us, right? We're just gonna put a position on a website and then people automatically are gonna come and apply for us. In real world, that's not true. A very few companies in the world have this, I will say, luxury, right? The luxury being that they're gonna have something on a website and people will go because they create this desire. And this is done through branding, right? They spend billions of dollars in branding, so people are getting drawn towards their brand. They want to work for them, right? How many of you right here will love the opportunity to work for Apple one day? Very few. Okay. Well, Apple probably gets hundreds of thousands of applicants for each job that they have, each job opening. That's done to branding. Now, there are very few companies just like Apple that get their candidates their way. Most companies don't. Okay, so what they need to do, going back to what I said first, go and find out where those candidates are living, where they're hanging out, and go after them. Or physically understand where they work. Literally, I had situations where I needed a good technicians. I drove to a property and I was looking at a couple of, a crew of maintenance guys, and I had my business cards with me. And I just handed them some business cards. I say, hey, we're looking for talent. Whether you're interested or you know someone that might be interested, just here's my number. Just give me a call, right? I also had situations where I had a very talented individual that worked about 55 minutes from my office. And he was working Monday to Friday. He couldn't break for lunch. He couldn't take a 2-hour lunch to come meet with me. So I said, okay, pick a place, pick a restaurant in an area where you're working, and I'd like to take you to lunch so we could have a conversation over lunch. And that's what I've done. I went over where he worked. We had lunch, and 2 days later, we offered him the job. But that was, for me, the only way to reach out. If I wasn't going to do that, somebody else would have found a way to get to him and hire him before I did. Another way to do it, and a very important way, is to build competitive offers. By competitive offers, this is what I mean. We're property management, right? So in an Athens area, let's say that there's 100 apartment communities. I'm just making up a number. I don't know how many there are, right? And you manage an apartment community within a 5-mile radius, you have 7 more. So there's 7 competitors, right? You advertise for a job, and then you're hiring for a service manager, for example. Okay, how do you determine what's a competitive pay? Most managers, most recruiters will look in that area and say, we're looking at what the competition pays. We just kind of average that number. If we're in within those numbers, we should be good. what they're really not looking at is that their competition has the same issue. They can't find people. So everybody's sharing the pain, and at the same time, everybody is doing the same thing as their competition is doing, and they expect a different result. That's kind of crazy, right? When you think about it. So a better way to do it is to actually look in your market. We're taking Athens market. And look at all the related industries. When you hire for maintenance, you should be looking at construction. You should be looking at HVAC jobs. You should be looking at appliance repair jobs, electrician jobs, plumbers jobs, because the apartment industry competes with all those trades. Okay? And in all reality, it's more difficult for us to get talent than it is for trades. Why? Because when you do a trade, typically, let's say HVAC, you're an HVAC technician, you have to be very good at HVAC. If you come to work for apartments, you're expected to have over average knowledge of carpentry, plumbing, electricity, HVAC, a number of trades, several trades. This knowledge takes several years to build, okay? Not to say that just one trade could be learned overnight, but it's a lot more complicated when you're hiring a maintenance, a jack of all trades, right? Someone that knows not everything, but has over average knowledge in several trades, right? So from that standpoint, it's difficult for us, because it's difficult to find that, qualified person. On the other hand, if they go to work for an HVAC company, the HVAC company typically don't ask them to cover after hours. They work 8 to 5, and that's kind of it, right? Apartment industry, when you work as a maintenance technician, it's a 24/7, not for all. It goes on a rotation, right? Because you have to have a person on call for emergencies. Someone doesn't have hot water, or there's a flood in an apartment, or there's no AC and there's 100 degrees outside. You have to have, so if you have a staff of 2 maintenance members, every other week, one person is on call. So they had to work, they had to be close to their phone. When the phone rings, get up, get dressed, and go resolve the problem. Sometimes it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So it makes it very hard, it makes it difficult when you have to compete against the trades. And you have to offer a lesser pay than what the trades are offering. You're offering less money. It's a more intensive schedule. And then you also have those requirements for after hours on the weekends. So it could be very difficult. Design a frictionless application process. How many of you have applied for jobs online? Ever? What's your name, sir?
Cooper.
So would you share with us, where did you apply? Like, what did you use, website or application app?
I've been using a lot of LinkedIn and Handshake.
Okay, LinkedIn and Handshake. Handshake is a new one for me.
It's basically like university systems, kind of simplified version of LinkedIn.
That's the reason. That's the reason. I haven't heard about it. How about Indeed? Did anyone apply on Indeed? Okay, so Indeed is probably, to my knowledge, right, the most popular app, especially for maintenance, for the work that I do. So LinkedIn created this one-click application process. Basically, you take your resume, you create an account, you take your resume, and you upload your resume. Let's say that you're a maintenance technician. This could apply for leasing agent, for manager, for whatever. All you had to do is go to your phone, you open the app, and you type in property manager, Athens, Georgia. When you type that in, the app is going to show you all the property manager openings in your area, the area you're interested in. The next thing you do, most jobs that are listed out there, they have a one-click application process, with your resume being uploaded already in a system, all you need to do is to go to each job and just click apply. And that's it. Your resume is being sent. Like, you could literally apply to 20 jobs in 5 minutes from your phone. How powerful is that? So this is the candidate experience, right? When we're talking about employer side, what we have to realize as hiring managers or recruiters is that when we advertise, we're competing against everybody else that's advertising in a market. So then what happens? First of all, frictionless application process. Everybody is gonna love the one-click application. Nobody is gonna be in love to fill out a 10-page application for a job, right? That's one thing. And then response time. How do we respond? So you have a candidate that applied to 20 jobs, and then you're competing against 19 other companies. Here's behavior that I've learned, okay? If you're not one of the first 3 people that get in touch with that person, you're never gonna hear from them. You won't even get probably them to pick up the phone and answer. Or if they do answer, they're gonna schedule an interview, and then that'll be the last time you hear from them. You're never gonna have a chance to meet them in person. Because what happened is, they apply to many jobs at times. They go to 1, 2, or 3 interviews at the most. If they could get the money, the benefits that they're looking for, that's it, they're gonna sign up. They're not gonna go to 5 or 10 or 15 interviews to make up their mind. It's not how I learn the candidate behavior. It's not gonna happen. Therefore, response time is very, very important. The next thing that comes into play is, okay, how do we respond quick? Organizations that manage 10, 20, 50 apartment communities, they don't do recruiting on site. Their human resources department have, someone designated to handle the recruiting process. You have to make sure that you establish the ownership. Who owns the process, right? So what happens? When the candidate clicks, to apply for the job that you advertised, that triggers an email to the person that's, linked to the, let's say, Indeed account, for example. Well, they had to be sure to open up that email and open the resume and do a screening, like look at the resume and say, this is a qualified individual. What do they do next? Do they call the resident? Do they send that to the hiring manager? You have to make sure that the least amount of people in a process is the best. Ideally, which is kind of hard to accomplish that in property management, but ideally will be that hiring manager gets those emails, they drop everything, they call the candidate, they set up an appointment, and they have the ability to make an offer on the spot, if they like the candidate, of course. So that's kind of the ideal situation. I put over there a couple of examples of ads from LinkedIn. They're both found on LinkedIn. The one up top is the one that LinkedIn is flooded with. Everybody wants to hire dynamic people. If you see an ad that says dynamic, what does that even tell you? Like, how does that get you excited, right? About the job. Versus this one. Right here. So she took a picture of her dog. She did something, very fast. It took her a couple of minutes to create this. How would you not like this ad? It's funny and it gets you interested. Hey, I want to see what is this about. If it's a position that you're interested in, of course. One thing that I want to ask you, of course, I just need your I just need you to be okay with this. Would you do a group picture with me? I want to do a group picture and put it on LinkedIn, right? You all have my name out there. If you don't have it, I should have done this at the very beginning. So this is how you'll find me on LinkedIn. So if you do have LinkedIn accounts, I like to take this picture. I'm gonna do a quick post and just give it like a couple of hours. Do a quick interaction, whether it's a like, a comment, whether it is both, and see what kind of traction we're gonna get from this from this post. Because I think it's very important to understand the power of social media platforms and also the power of networking. Like being connected with as many people is not really the number of people, but being very, very actively connected with a core number of people that are always willing to interact with you very fast. I learned this being very beneficial for me. I don't think that I mentioned, but my current job and my previous job, they came to me via LinkedIn without me asking for work. I was employed at the time. They were actually connections of mine on LinkedIn that weren't even the hiring managers for the roles. There were actually someone in a company that knew of me. They read my posts and they reach out and say, hey, my company has this opportunity. You will probably be a great fit for it. Are you interested? And this is how I ended up getting this job and getting my previous job. Even more so, the previous job did not even exist. Like someone created a job. They knew that they asked me if I was interested in something like this. They didn't have a job posted at the time. I said that I was. We had a conversation and they created the job and they hired me. So social media, very powerful.